All right. I think this means we are live. Hey there, eggheads. Juan Carlos Bagnell here for Newegg Studios. Back again with another really great live stream. I'm super stoked for this one too. I know I say that often whenever we have these fun live streams, but this we're bringing ASUS back. And this one is a special nerdy flair. This one's got a very particular focus as we're digging through an incredible collaboration, a really fun partnership between ASUS and, you know what? I'm not going to gild the lily. I'm going to bring in our special guest, a man who, if you followed our channel, if you followed our live streams, definitely doesn't need the introduction, but he's going to get it. JJ from ASUS. Thank you so much for joining us on another one of these live streams.
It's fantastic as always to be able to join you again on a live stream, JC. Thank you. And of course, thanks to the entire Newegg audience that is joining us here, and hopefully maybe some new time attendees in terms of the stream. I think especially with what we're doing in terms of this specialized collaboration between Sunrise and being able to bring an amazing brand like ASUS and of course an amazing IP and portfolio with Gundam, and kind of bringing those two together. There's an opportunity to, I think, even speak bigger than our traditional kind of CE or kind of DIY enthusiast base. So it's a really exciting stream.
Yeah, and this is just it's the funsies, right? I mean, we've had so many conversations about things like customization, PC DIY build, your own home gaming rigs, workstation rigs, and whenever we can kind of hone in on that specific flair, like with a property that I have to admit, I kind of want to put you on the spot. Like, what is your relationship with Gundam? Because I'm a filthy casual. I wasn't as into the show, but I loved the toys when I was a kid.
No, I think you nailed it kind of on the head. I think, one of the really amazing things about being able to work with, Sunrise and being able to take advantage and collaborate with taking, the Gundam IP and bringing it into kind of our product portfolio, it speaks to a lot of different layers. When you talk about kind of, I think, the PC DIY enthusiast, there's a lot of things that drive kind of the passion and the interest. Sometimes it's the physical elements, which also exist in, take for instance, like the Gunpla community. So people that actually go about actually building their own mechs and customizing their own mechs. There's that kinesthetic experience that you have similar to the PC DIY experience. There's that inherent kind of technology, even for me, whether it was looking at manga, anime, looking at, series or of course, movies. And then from there, even, comic books, there's a lot of correlation in terms that technology is kind of always this weird backdrop of thing that's interesting and kind of drives a lot of, I think, the interest in these type of kind of IPs and these kind of worlds, right? And similarly, that's always one of the things that I thought was cool when I first got into PC building. And I think drives a lot of passion for new and old builders, right? Is people that they look at this kind of cool hardware and it goes, wow, this is really cool. It's distinct, it's unique. So there's a lot of kind of synergy in that regard. And I think for us, working to be able to bridge this has actually been a really long kind of evolving process. A lot of our ID team that we have internally has really wanted to help to kind of expand upon the traditional, really specialized ID designs that we have, which have become very unique amongst ASUS and its respective product series, but, work more closely with, respected and established IP brands out there. We've done that on the system sides with things like our acronym collaboration on the laptop side, now what we have with Gundam, and we've done it in the past with ROG as well, with things like Call of Duty. So this is just kind of another foray to really, I think, be able to speak to, passionate community users that might be interested in this hardware, whether it might be for aesthetics, whether it might be for a personal vibe because you've got a connection to maybe a specific series or an anime, or just because you think it's cool, right? So it can fall into a lot of different spaces.
Well, and it definitely speaks to something of this time right now where I kind of feel like the this is so dorky. It's kind of the PC custom build meta is kind of leaning into some of the aesthetics that are popularized in mecha anime and mecha design, and just how cross-cultural that has been, from Iron Man armors all the way to current incarnations of our favorite space operas in live action films, all kind of coming together right now. And the fact that we can buy these parts to cram them into a computer case to fit that visual aesthetic is phenomenal. It just makes my nerd heart happy.
No, and especially with a great IP like Gundam, they mirror almost a very similar kind of age along with ASUS as far as how long they've been around. It's kind of
Yeah.
surprising sometimes to look back and think that we're not talking about a decade, we're not talking 15 years, we're talking actually multiple decades in terms of the actual existence of these things. So there's been an opportunity for there to kind of be a kind of a subtle kind of influence, and then has scaled
Hmm.
over time, especially with the popularity. ASUS #1 world motherboard manufacturer worldwide. We have a huge affinity of passionate enthusiasts that love our hardware and love our designs. And equally, same thing in Gundam. It's loved the world over by so many different regions, so many different communities. The users have different things that they've picked up on that they love and they appreciate it. And I think we've just seen that feedback from the community that they love to see kind of this progressive designs. And one of the things that ASUS really prides itself on is our ID team and kind of their, I think, eclecticness and their approach to really being able to kind of try to do things that are different, distinct, but also with a high degree of polish and quality execution. So when the opportunity came about to be able to work with Sunrise, while it was a compressed timeline, it was pretty exciting. And I think that's what this focus of the stream is. We made the formal launch end of last month, around the 22nd, and it has been super popular. In
Yeah,
fact,
the response has been insane. I've been following the threads of emails behind the scenes, not to like air too much of our BTS here, but like, yeah, just trying to keep track on what parts were in stock and what parts were moving and when new shipments were coming was kind of
yeah,
incredible.
no, it's been fantastic to work with Newegg and be a launch partner for this kind of key launch for us. And definitely, we're looking for you guys in the community to help to feedback to us that if you really love this type of collaboration, let us know so that we can continue to work to kind of allocate this, because there is always a little bit of kind of a test piloting stage, right, when you're broadening this out. And this was a very extensive rollout. If you consider that the entirety of the product portfolio that we put in, covers everything from monitors to chassis to routers to peripherals to motherboards to cooling solutions and even specialized accessories like headsets and headphone holders. That's a lot of
Yeah.
work to be able to put out there within a product portfolio, but it's been amazing to be able to see the community really be excited about this.
Well, and that excitement, it's so tangible because I think what you said just a little while back kind of nails it. Like, there have been influences back and forth between different pieces of multimedia and science fiction and what we actually build into our boxes. So it is always exciting to me when you get to take it to that next step. This isn't just influenced by Gundam. This is that proper collaboration that really puts it front and center, what you're trying to build and what you're trying to make out of it.
100%. And I think, our designers were excited by that. Internally, we always have kind of our own kind of design walls, which our ID team used to be able to kind of craft and design and develop many of our products. Some of you might know, take for instance, like in the ROG product line, there's kind of two different ROG kind of ID designs between our strict series and between our formal higher end ROG product, but they're part of this ROG worldview and this kind of cyberpunk dystopian kind of world. And there's been a lot of kind of inspiration that's been pulled from from games, from movies, from novels, from anime. So it was really exciting for them to be able to evolve and, like you said, go even beyond just kind of inspiration and kind of
Yeah.
going, oh, this is kind of maybe interesting, and actually be able to take such iconic IP like what you have with the RX series mechs along with Zaku, and be able to actually see that fully formed in a product. And I think that, like segues into that. If you guys haven't checked it out, make sure to check out the landing page that we do have. It
Mhm.
actually covers both the RX and the Zaku series respectively, so you can kind of clearly see. I know JC's, I think we have a fairly updated kind of matrix, and what we're going to try to make sure to cover on this stream is the
For
product that
sure.
is right now available. There
Yeah.
will be a couple of refreshes coming in over the next week or so for some of the products that are not right now listed in stock, but there are already a few products that already have been essentially sold out, so that won't be available. So we're going to try to make sure to focus in on the stream on what is still right now available for you guys and what we're going to be getting in a refresh.
Absolutely. Before we jump into the actual lineup of different products that we're going to be talking about today, I did want to put it out there that we might have, I don't know, just some piece of hardware related to this stream just kind of sitting around. It's really good at helping you connect computers and talk to the internet. And if we can find a good home for it over the course of this stream, I mean, maybe someone just leaves a really fun or insightful or witty comment or something. We just want to make sure something like that makes it to a good home. So maybe if we find a good adopted parent for this piece of technology that's just sort of lying around in the Newegg warehouse, we'll be able to share with you during the stream who might be grabbing that.
Yeah, I think there are some general kind of recommendations we've got. If you guys can make sure to go ahead and check out our ASUS NA Instagram account, drop a hashtag, I think ASUS Gundam hashtag, you'll have an opportunity to check out some cool hardware. So you guys can definitely follow up on that regard while you're definitely finding out about the cool set of hardware that we'll be diving into. And we've got a little bit of everything. We're going to be talking about some motherboards. We're going to be talking about some routers, headsets, peripherals, a little mix of different things, and hopefully helping you guys have a good insight into, some of the value, the features, the functionality of the product bringing, along with that really amazing, Gundam design and aesthetic. I do also want to note, though, that all the products we're going to be talking about fundamentally have an alternate non-Gundam based version.
Yes.
So if, worst case scenario, maybe, like I think up till yesterday, I saw that it was refreshed back again in stock was the Gundam TKL scope keyboard. But we do have the non-Gundam version. So if you kind of are looking through and you go like, oh, I still really like a lot of those features and functions, then you can definitely still make sure to pick up the active in development standard version of that product. So that is just something to keep in mind.
Yes, definitely. Okay. JJ, I've got motherboards up first. You wanna jump in?
Yeah. I definitely think motherboards is a good place to start off with. So we actually have two motherboards in this kind of essentially collaboration. One is going to be for the Intel side, and one is going to be for the AMD side. So one is an ATX based board, and one is a micro ATX board. So let's go ahead and first start off with the Z590 based motherboard. Essentially, this is going to be from the RX Gundam line. So it's going to have that really nice, bold, bright white stylized aesthetic on it. I've got a board that actually is the basis for this design, which is the Tough Gaming Z590 Plus. It has a very different monochrome, clean kind of aesthetic to it, but the Gundam version will essentially have a very different design aesthetic. It's got an almost very similar to kind of our Dash A series on the RG Strict side, where it's a bit more silver, it's a little bit more monochrome. So I want to kind of give you a little bit of a run through on some of the kind of the key aspects. So with it being Z590, of course, the key element is going to be that this is 11th gen CPU support. So that means, of course, any one of the 11th gen series CPUs, you can drop this in there, you're good to go. Power delivery design on here is quite robust, so it doesn't matter whether you're going to be running stock or being overclocked. You can fully feel confident that it's going to be stable and reliable, give you a great experience. Of course, this fully supports DDR4 memory, so any number of different speeds. Many users probably going to go with something like in the 3600 megahertz to about 4000 megahertz. Rocket Late, though, which is the CPU that would be from 11th gen, does feature a very impressive memory controller. You can easily actually exceed speeds of 4000, though. You can go 4200, 4400 megahertz, a little bit dependent, of course, on the quality of your memory controller when kind of defining that. Another big kind of update for Z590 is going to be that you'll see, and we'll get a little bit of closer some secondary shots here, but it's going to be the M.2. Yeah, I think, JC, thanks for bringing up the product page there. You can see the stylized aesthetic. It's got that really, really nice, clean tricolor, of course, accent that the RX mech is known for, that silver stylized design. But you can see those large, broad heat sinks that are, of course, there on the board. Still has support for 3 M.2 based SSDs. This board does support PCI Gen 4. So if you want to be able to drop in, of course, one of the latest generation graphics cards, you can go ahead and go that route. But of course, if you have a prior gen PCI Gen 3 graphics card, will fully work. Same thing for your M.2 SSDs. Can support PCI Gen 4 SSDs, NVMe SSDs, but same thing. If you just go with a standard good quality like SN550, right, will entirely work. No issues in that regard as well. Connectivity-wise, this board is really stacked. You'll actually see that it has an integrated I/O shield. We'll get a little bit closer look on that, but that's really nice for convenience. You don't have to worry about remembering to install this. This was actually something ASUS invented. We were the innovators of the integrated I/O shield, but you've got 2.5 gigabit networking on there, which is kind of that next generation standard, along with Wi-Fi 6 built on board and the newest generation Bluetooth standard. So if you want to pair this up with them like a headset or a mouse or a different type of Bluetooth enabled device, you have that flexibility as well. You do have USB Type-C, USB 3.Gen 2. Type C on the rear, as well as USB Type C here on the front. So regardless of whether you want Type C on the front of your chassis or on the rear, you do have that flexibility. You also have support for our Thunderbolt 4 expansion card. So if you really kind of want super crazy I/O, high-speed performance, that board gets you covered. And then, a couple of other last nights. This does have our isolated audio design, so Tough Gaming Audio with an audio suite that's included on there, which gives you some DTS profile options. And I'll show you a couple pieces of the software there. But that is going to be the Tough Gaming Z590. So here, let's take just a closer couple of looks here, see if maybe anybody's got any questions that might have popped up there on the board there. But a really great foundation if you're looking to build an 11th gen base system. And I will also note, of course, you do have interoperability support for 10th gen base CPUs as well. So you do have either option. Although keep in mind that some of the expansion parameters of the board, if you're not utilizing it in 11th gen, take for instance, not all the M.2 base slots will be accessible to you due to differences in 10th gen and 11th gen PCIe Express support.
Yeah, I've been looking through the chat. I mean, we've got a lot of comments saying, hey, that looks really cool, or that looks sick. So I think the design is on point. I think people are responding well to the look of that board.
So let me see here. I've got it here. So I've got it lined up pretty easy for you guys to be able to see a little bit of a closer shot, I think, on this board. So if we cut in a little bit here, you can actually see some subtle things that sometimes people might not always realize. We have thicker pins that are going to be on the CPU socket. That just helps to actually lower socket-based temperature and increase the current handling for the board. So great, again, if you're going to be running kind of an overclock to your board. It's not something that you have to do, but it's just kind of a design improvement. If we take a little bit of a closer look right here, we've got our QLEDs. These are diagnostic LEDs that will light up for the VGA, for the graphics card, for the DRAM, for the boot device in the event that you kind of run into an issue. Of course, this board does have RGB headers on here, so we got you covered there. Let me adjust that exposure a little bit. But you can go ahead and course connect things like fans, LED strips, chassis, different types of offerings, RGB enabled items there. And those are all fully able to be controlled in sync with our ASUS Armory Crate software, if that's something that you want access to. And then also right here, you can see there's that isolated audio design where you can see that actual little line there. It actually vertically and horizontally isolates the audio section here from the rest of the board. Now, one cool thing that I did want to show you is going to be, let me go ahead and just remove this drive here, and I'll brighten this up just a smidge. You'll see is that one really cool innovation that we did here for this generation was we implemented something that we call our Q-latch design. So you can see this one cool part is that these are captive screws, so the heatsink itself, you don't have to worry about losing the screws when you remove this. Yeah. But you'll actually see these little mechanisms right here. These actually do not require any screws. So traditionally, when you were to install, let's say like an M.2 SSD, I get kind of close, you would have to have this like standoff and screw, and you'd have to kind of get that all together and get the screw in there and lock it down. That's no longer required. Essentially, you can just angle in the M.2 drive, and you will just lock it straight into place. So it's a tool-free level of operation. It's very simple, very easy. It just makes the overall experience that much better. It's very similar to kind of like when I talked about having the I/O shield, right, fully integrated here on the back of the board, right? It's just helping to improve the overall experience.
Yeah, I mean, that always gets a reaction too. We got a couple comments like Jamal's up right now. No tiny screws to lose. Because I definitely turn into an infomercial hand actor whenever I'm trying to organize my PC build screws. It's like, has this ever happened to you? It does all the time.
It does. I mean, well, you know, the thing is that sometimes, you know, some users also, this is a precision tip screwdriver. This is a PH0. Not every user sometimes has a 0 or a double 0. A precision tip screwdriver, maybe they don't have a magnetic tip, or maybe they don't have a magnetizer to magnetize the tip. You'd be surprised. We actually get a lot of people that will write in saying, I don't have the screw and they can't lock it down, or maybe they have the incorrect screw driver and they actually strip the screw, or they drop the screw and it gets lost somewhere in the chassis, you know, something like that. So just making this process simpler for them to just literally be able to remove the heatsink, slide in the drive, and then lock it into place. Just makes that process just far simpler for them. So that's a nice improvement. But going back to the audio design, JC, I've gone ahead and queued up here a little video here. But we can actually show users is this is actually the DTS audio suite. It comes included with the board. So you can go ahead and have customized profiles for different types of gaming environments along with a multi-band EQ, so you can kind of tailor your audio experience. Sometimes this kind of stuff gets overlooked, but it does come included with the board. So this is a nice kind of just software addition. We've also got some other kind of software here. Give me a second here to go ahead and load up another one up for you guys.
Yeah, for sure.
And I will.
But yeah, I'll say as a former recording engineer and kind of an audio snob, I've always appreciated that attention to audio. I feel like we spend so much time, money, and effort on improving visuals that the audio conversation sometimes doesn't always get as much attention as it deserves.
For sure, and I think we definitely know that gamers and enthusiasts, whether it's music, movies, videos, you watching a stream, listen to music, through a streaming service, or just playing games, you want a good quality experience, and definitely you get that with the good isolated audio design there. And I think it's just part of the software experience. What we find is that having a richer kind of software suite can add just additional value for users in a lot of different ways. So being able to kind of give them more options on how they can tailor the audio is really what we're trying to do here. Here's another kind of software addition that we have that was new, which is our ASUS AI noise canceling software suite. This is a bi-directional noise canceling application. So it works with analog or digital microphones, doesn't matter. You just have to map it to your microphone. And then from there, once you go ahead and do that, you just go ahead and select your options, enable it, run in the background, and you're good to go. And while there's definitely similar applications that are out there, take for instance like Crisp. Crisp is free, but it has like a limited time block. If you're using the free account, it only runs like, I think like a certain time block, like an hour or something along those lines.
Yeah.
You have to pay a subscription fee if you want to keep it in perpetuity and kind of use it indefinitely. NVIDIA has an amazing RTX suite, which is part of NVIDIA Studio, which is a fantastic option. But if you don't have one of their newer graphics cards which enables that, then this is a great option. We also have found in our testing that the CPU utilization is quite a bit lower. NVIDIA Studio is an amazing suite, but it does have a noticeable, definitely, CPU essentially runtime in terms of its percentage of utilization. Here, effectively, this is almost free. It generally will average about 1% to sub 1% CPU utilization, so it almost has no effect. So you can kind of just try it out and see kind of what the experience is for you. And it is based on advanced machine learning algorithms that we have, so it does a really good job of filtering out things, like your keyboard clicks and your mouse clicks and just kind of humming of AC environments and different things like that. So that does also come included with the board.
And I love calling it, it's basically free.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is. It's no cost to you, except, of course, the cost for the board, right? Because it does come included with it. So you just have to kind of try it out. Two last kind of pieces that I've got here. I've got one other one, which is going to be this, which is our Tough Gaming LAN Tough Gaming Turbo LAN software, which this is just kind of an easy way to be able to prioritize applications. So if you are, let's say, for gaming, you can just go ahead and you can see, say, for instance, here, we've got Apex Legends loaded up. In real time, I could actually see all the information regarding my game. If I then want to prioritize that above any other application that's running, I can go ahead and set that as a prioritization. And then if I even running other services in the background, Windows will essentially ensure that that one item is essentially maintaining the lowest latency. Because it's not really about bandwidth. When you talk about online gaming, sometimes people have a misconception like gaming takes a lot of bandwidth. Gaming actually online for multiplayer games, competitive-based games, doesn't use a lot of bandwidth. It's actually very small in terms of the overall amount of bandwidth that you're using, but latency is critical. So what you really want to try to do is ensure that as all those essentially packets are being queued up across the operating system, is that you want to try to have the games be at the forefront of anything else so that the latency maintains its best kind of level, as opposed to kind of being interrupted by other things that might be going on in the background. And again, this is free software for you. You can either try it or not try it. It's ultimately up to you. But the great thing is that it does come included with the board, so it is an available option to you. And the last one that I wanted to touch on here is one that's probably not as commonly kind of talked about, but it's a very common thing. So let me go ahead and just remove some of these guys right here. But it's going to be a really cool option in the UEFI. So, we were actually one of the big innovators in this regard, the first to implement what we called DOCP, which is XMP on an Intel system. And when we talk about the AMD board, this function will be the same. But essentially just easy option inside the UEFI where you can go in and you can click one button, whether it's in the advanced mode interface or in the easy mode interface, to be able to go ahead and set the corresponding frequency for your memory kit on your board. We actually found that quite a number of users sometimes do not enable the XMP profile. So having just an easy toggle option within the easy interface or the advanced interface makes it simpler. Especially this is maybe even more important on AMD platforms where XMP is an Intel memory standard, but it can be applied to an AMD-based board. So these guys have that for you. So
yeah, it's definitely one of those troubleshooting things too. It's like, hey, I'm not getting what I think I should be out of this hardware, and then it's always like, oh, you didn't turn that on. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And that's really what it's about, is just you're trying to kind of help to streamline the experience. Yeah. On the AMD side here, I think if you want to bring up the product page, we've got the Zaku variant. So we go from a kind of really clean, and bold and bright white kind of board, where here we've got a bold and bright red aesthetic, which I think really speaks to the Zaku 2 identity. It perfectly complements the GT301, which we'll talk about a little bit later, which is the chassis that we have in terms of fitting both ATX and micro ATX based boards, but it goes perfectly with it. Here you step down to a micro ATX board, but it still offers a robust power delivery design. You can run any Ryzen 3000 series or Ryzen 5000 series. Doesn't matter whether you're talking about like a 3600X or 5600X, or even if you want to go with something a bit, beefier, like a 58, 5900 series, you can entirely do that on this board. The power delivery is solid enough. Robust heatsink design is going to get you taken care of. You have the 2.5 gigabit networking. You've got also the Wi-Fi 6E, and pretty much all the other key specifications that I talked about on the ATX version on the Intel side are going to be there. The main three differences are going to be this one does not have the integrated I/O shield. There's no Thunderbolt 4 support on this board, and it doesn't have that new Q latch implementation on the M.2 side. It also only does two M.2 SSDs versus the Z590 board, of course, but being a higher end position in terms of the chipset, can support actually up to 3. So that is going to be a little bit of a difference. But overall, when we talk about like the networking specifications, the RGB connectivity, the audio design, the networking specifications, the UEFI options I talked about, those are all pretty much going to be parity. So you can really get a great experience on either side, whether you want to go AMD or whether you want to go Intel. And again, this is actually what the Zaku line, we do actually have this available both in the chassis and in the motherboard. So it's a really cool pairing to be able to bring together and have this really cool kind of bold and distinctive design that you really just traditionally don't have. Most of the motherboards in the lineup are going to be predominantly monochrome. So they're usually like black. Maybe we've got some white and silver, but having some color, if you want to be able to kind of have like a really bold and bright, cool system, this is a really cool option.
Yeah, and it's Xeon with a Z, not Xeon with an X. So if anyone was worried about, chipset compatibility, that was the worst joke I could come up with in that moment.
Yeah, and so just also to help to kind of reaffirm for users is, when we get into the networking side, these boards also are great kind of complementary to the networking routers that we're going to be talking about, because both of these do feature that latest generation of Wi-Fi 6. So I know for some gamers, we've definitely done polling over the last few years where you've seen almost now close to about 50% of users are utilizing Wi-Fi as their active connection. Some still don't use it because of the concerns about bandwidth and latency. But with Wi-Fi 6, you can legitimately have, even at kind of far-reaching distances, between 200 to 600 megabits. So you're talking about 2 to 4 to almost 6 times the speed of a 10100 Ethernet cable with comparable latency performance. And that's achievable with Wi-Fi 6. So you definitely don't have to kind of be concerned that Wi-Fi isn't going to be good enough for you to be able to kind of stream, download, game, or kind of be able to do everything that you want it to do. But at the same time, these boards are also even taking it to the next level for those that are kind of demanding and really want that next level of connectivity with 2.5 gigabit networking, which is, of course, going to be 2.5 times faster than your traditional 1 gigabit standard.
I've become such a huge convert. When you were kind of helping me plan out my strategy for my home network, and now everything is consistent. I have a couple 10 gig parts, but everything is consistent at 2.5. It is so much faster.
It is.
It's incredible.
It is an awesome experience. And, we bring a lot of expertise there because, of course, we're the only motherboard manufacturer in the world that does have a dedicated networking division, a full-fledged networking division. So that gives us a lot of kind of expertise and experience at being able to have a lot of synergy between kind of the products that you want to be able to have on both sides, right? Not only the system, but also the router. And one last note, I know, of course, Microsoft made a pretty big announcement with a Windows 11. Both of these motherboards do have full Windows 11 support. So that means that critical items like a TPM 2.0 compliance, as well as what is called native UEFI booting, are essentially disabling CSM, which is an option in the UEFI. Both of these motherboards feature support for this. So essentially, right now, if you're going to run Windows 10 on these platforms, no worries. But of course, if you want to make that transition later on, in the end of 2021 or moving into 2022, these boards will have support for Windows 11.
Yeah, it's been good to know. I mean, like more recently built PCs seem to be on the roadmap, but just the way that Microsoft has kind of staged this rollout, the initial confusion was definitely upsetting for a lot of people as to where that line in the sand was going to be drawn.
Yeah, it can be sometimes a little confusing. That's why we recommend also people to, join our PC DIY group. We had a day of post, that broke down all the boards, the options that you need to have available in the UEFI, how you could double check things, and kind of a lot of insights. One question I did see there from,
for sure,
I think C Swan was asking actually about a different motherboard that we have under our ROG lineup, the ROG Crosshair Dark Hero or our Crosshair 8. Both are essentially the same board, just a little bit of a difference. But he was asking, does that board have the TurboLand software? That board doesn't have TurboLand, but it has an even more advanced version of software that we call Game Burst 6. So the ROG board, pretty much in every way, is an even further kind of higher end board in terms of its feature set functionality. And that networking suite that I saw here, it's even more advanced and more elaborate with some other cool options that are available. So essentially, yes, it has it, but an even better version of it.
I was going to say, so the answer is no, but better.
Yes, no, but better. That's a perfect way to look at it. So I think next up we can, I think, segue maybe into talking about some of the routers.
Absolutely. I've got video lined up for router white and router red. Where would you like to start?
There we go. I think we can go ahead and actually start off with either one. We actually got two routers for you guys that we're going to talk about here. We've got the RT-AX82U and the RT-AX86U. So both of these are going to be Wi-Fi 6. And if you guys don't really kind of know, or you kind of haven't kind of been aware of what's been going on with Wi-Fi, right? We had the big transition moving over from Wi-Fi 5 to Wi-Fi 6. ASUS is really at kind of the forefront with having now the most expansive Wi-Fi 6 ecosystem, including even new Wi-Fi 6E, which is a kind of separate but part of the Wi-Fi 6 specification standard. And really the key thing is here is that now we're seeing essentially Wi-Fi 6 amongst kind of really all of our key technologies. The latest generation of motherboards, laptops, smartphones, televisions, even some consoles like the PlayStation 5 have a Wi-Fi 6 built in. And the important thing that you want to keep in mind is that if you have a Wi-Fi 6 enabled device, but you don't have a Wi-Fi 6 router, you can essentially be handicapping the performance of that device. There are a couple of key technologies under Wi-Fi 6. One is going to be essentially higher panel support and essentially frequency support, so 80 megahertz and 160 megahertz. That is critical at helping to unlock faster speeds. There's another technology that's called multi-user MIMO. This essentially just means that if you have multiple devices, they can all at tandem be able to essentially work with the router simultaneously. In a traditional fashion, what generally will happen is that each device is kind of sequentially addressed and processed by the router. This happens very quickly, so it seems to be that all essentially the devices are quote unquote being managed at the same time. But with multi-user MIMO, it's a true concurrent level of utilization and access to the router. And so you can have 2, 3, 4 devices simultaneously working with the router. This just helps to improve latency and overall performance, especially in households where you've got 10, 15, 20, 40 maybe devices, right? So that's going to be another kind of key specification. There's even really cool technology that they're baking into Wi-Fi 6 that can improve battery life because of the way that the actual antennas work in coordination with the devices and not having to essentially be as inefficient at consuming the battery. So this is more important for mobile devices, like I say, laptops and smartphones, tablets, things along those lines, but it is another cool technology. So the big differences that you're going to have here, the RT82U is going to be the slightly quote unquote lower end unit, but it's still very high performance. This is going to essentially be a 1.5 gigahertz tri-core based SoC. We don't normally kind of think about processors inside of a router, but that is a kind of a big step up. If you kind of talk about older routers, older routers are going to usually be kind of a dual core, maybe somewhere between like 200 to about like 600 megahertz processing capabilities. Sometimes they can get into 800 to about over 1 gigahertz, but this is a 1.5 gigahertz modern tri-core processor. It also has high-speed DDR memory, and it features a AX band for 2.4 and for 5 gigahertz. A critical part is going to be the 2.4 is a 2x2 based antenna configuration, and the 5 gigahertz is a 4x4 antenna configuration. I'll talk a little bit more in a moment about why that's important. If we move over to the 86U, which is going to be the red model, this is the higher end model that we'll offer. This is going to step up to a 1.8 gigahertz quad core, so faster frequency and an additional core. And then you move up to 2.4 gigahertz 3x3, along with 4x4 for the 5 gigahertz. This one also features a 2.5 gigabit LAN port. So it's kind of really been purpose built for these next generation of kind of laptops and desktops that have this, or maybe ISP service providers, right? Where if you're kind of going into that ultra class of like fiber or certain type of ultra high speed ISP services, then this can kind of be beneficial to you in that regard. So some of you might be wondering about why do you need kind of these 1.5 gigahertz tri-core, or this 1.8 gigahertz quad core. And the speed of the processor ultimately just helps to manage better performance from the router, especially as you're using more functions on the router at one time, and you're also managing more devices. It's very similar to kind of a PC. If you try to open up 20 tabs on a dual core enabled laptop or desktop, you probably wouldn't have that great of experience. If you just went over to like a quad core laptop or desktop, you would see much better experience in being able to manage multiple of those items or those essentially applications at one time. So that is kind of the key spec differentiation. And I'm going to load up a little video here to kind of just talk through some of the other kind of cool general features here about the router side. But these are two really great options that, again, if you kind of want to move up into kind of Wi-Fi 6, it's going to be a really great option for you. So I think, JC, here, the video is going to be loading up here in a moment. You can see here, great example, just multiple devices. We have an app that's available on Android and iOS. There's also a rich user interface. And here we're actually showing you a really cool option that we have with what's called AI protection, which you can enable. It will actually monitor links for you across all active devices. You can enable it through the web interface or through the app. And there what you see happened is that actually in an email, I clicked on a link. And when that link actually, I just paused that there because I want to kind of go over that there. But the really cool thing that happened is that when you clicked on the link in the email, what actually occurred is that it was going to reach out to a malicious server. So essentially a website that potentially could inject your system with, let's say, some type of malware, a ransomware kit, a malicious server that could be monitoring data. It could be doing any number of different things. So what we actually do is we work with Trend Micro, and we've essentially integrated their IP to essentially be able to monitor these malicious servers and links directly on the router level. So you don't have to have software installed on your phone. You don't have to have software installed on the tablet or on the desktop or on the laptop. You literally just turn this option on, and the router will dynamically and in real time monitor all those active links. And the great thing is, you saw there that email, I just went to hit the unsubscribe link, and you saw that it actually took you there. So sometimes it's not always like a site that you might think that it's just going to take you to this malicious link, but it adds this layer of protection. Now, this is not antivirus software, not anti-malware software in terms of disinfecting your system, but it's a very advanced level of protection to help to safeguard your network, especially for, I think, the wide variance of links that now people distribute, whether it's through social media platforms or through instant messaging. And this is free. It comes in both of these routers. It's continually updated, so there's no cost to you. You just have to turn the function on.
Nice. We
Oh,
do
go
have
ahead,
just one
JC.
quick question here that I think you could probably help us out with. This is from C-Swan again. One has 3 and one has 4 antennas. Does that affect anything to any noticeable degree? And I've actually always kind of wondered, in terms of router design, when you get those sort of like those insect-like antennas in different arrays, is that better for certain types of home layouts, or is this really just signal transmission?
I wouldn't say so much the kind of the layouts. The important part is not necessarily always look at the physical antennas that you see on the router itself, but that number that I noted to you on the specification page. So the 2.4 gigahertz on, let's say, the 82U, like on this model, is a 2x2 base configuration, whereas on the 86U, it's a 3x3 configuration. This is more important because that's what's called the TX and the RX. It's the transmit and the receive. Having a higher number count for the transmit and receive will generally lead to further range as well as better concurrent device performance. So if you have, let's say, more devices that you would want to have populate on the 2.4 gigahertz band, which is quite common because 2.4 gigahertz is the most common band that's used, you would want to probably consider a 3x3. As opposed to that, if you're really only predominantly using the 5 gigahertz band, the performance would almost be the same between the two units. So that is the more important specification to consider. Don't necessarily look specifically at the external antenna array, because that can change for quite a number of different reasons. The more important specification is what is listed in the spec, specifically for each band. So that 2.4, like I said, it could be 2.2, 2x2, or it could be like 3x3. Or you could even have higher performing. You could have a 4x4 2.4 gigahertz and also a 4x4 5 gigahertz. Okay.
And that can influence the actual hardware design, but really you kind of need to read into those specs to see what each of those antennas is
correct.
Really
and generally what you'll find is that this does scale in cost. So of course, the more costly the router, you'll generally find that it will have a more complex, what is called spatial stream. So essentially the number of essentially TX and RX, so essentially the transmit and the receive configuration will be higher, and that will essentially allow you to essentially just have more concurrent number of devices. And like I said, this also correlates generally to range, so the router will generally offer even a higher level of range. And if you move into the highest end units, you'll even then step into, of course, where both of these models are dual band, you'll step into tri-band based models, which we do also offer. Yeah.
Good.
And so rounding out here, another cool option you can see on both of these units, they do offer Amazon Alexa support. So you actually can go in and enable this function. You have up to 20 different commands that you can actually execute through your Alexa-based devices. So you can do things like pause the internet. You could actually reboot the actual router. You can actually set it to, let's say, like media mode. So you can do a lot of cool different functions. So you don't have to even go into the app or go into a web-based interface. A really big update that we rolled out that is really cool. You're seeing it here in the web interface, but it is entirely accessible through the app, is also going to be what's called quality of service. So these are kind of routers from our gaming line, but they can work for a lot of great uses. So you actually see here that there is a QoS for different types of experience. So for like streaming, for downloading, from work from home, from learn from home. Maybe you've got Zoom classes, maybe, Facebook Messenger, Google Meet, maybe specialized platforms, LinkedIn Learning. It doesn't matter. We have actually presets where you can go in and you can toggle it and you can actually optimize the actual packet performance. So actually the router kind of figures out what is going on across your network, and it knows, oh, this is actually a video on demand service as opposed to a virtual meeting software, and we can prioritize one versus the other if they're both happening at the same time. And the cool part is you'll actually see here that you can go in and you can toggle this. So you can dynamically switch this. So if you want one to all of a sudden be the priority, you can set one to be the priority. Like you can see right there, maybe I want browsing to be at the best, right? But maybe I want to change that to media streaming. You can do that dynamically through the app, really easy on the fly. We also have something that is called deep packet inspection analysis. Sounds like a really complicated term. All it really means is that when you turn it on, the router can all of a sudden monitor all your devices, and it can monitor essentially the content that is coming through those devices. So over time, you'll actually get a cool pie chart that'll show you how much you use on video streaming services, websites, how much is being downloaded. You can see a website history that's all broken down to you, and you can see that per every single device. So if maybe you're a parent and you want to kind of monitor what's going on, this is a really cool way that you can monitor it across every single device. Or if you're somebody that just wants to get the best experience from all your devices and figure out kind of what is being used in terms of bandwidth throughout your home, you can do this in a really easy way. The cool thing is literally just turning this on. You can come back to this like a month later, and you can look at a really nice pie chart, which will break down to you per device, per different types of service information. It'll all be kind of broken down to you there. And again, all these things that we're talking about are present in both of these units. The real kind of big difference that you just want to pick is the aesthetic design. The RX has that great, really nice white design aesthetic. The 86U, of course, is going to be in that red aesthetic. And like I said, the 86U is going to give you a little bit higher performance with that 2.5 gigabit connection, right? And one cool thing here too, if I can show it to you, let me see if I can plug it into it, but I don't know if it got your guys' video. The 82U does have RGB lighting. So
You need more RGBs. While you get that set up, I just recently did an editorial for a news site that I do some freelancing for. And one of the big questions that they kept getting were things like tips and tricks to stay under your data cap. And it really is kind of a bummer that there isn't more hardware out there that can give people a solid lay of the land on what their home traffic looks like. Like if you're in an area where Xfinity is hitting you with the data cap, they'll give you like a pie graph for the month, and that includes
everything. Yeah,
byte.
it's very coarse.
It's not particularly helpful, but it is surprisingly difficult to get a good single point breakdown, not only of just what's on your network, but like what has that network activity really looked like over a set period of time. So seeing features like that, if you have to stay under a cap and those caps are costing you money, that could be a way to help subsidize the cost of your router upgrade.
No, you're 100% right. And even just kind of knowing what's going on, it's nice to sometimes know that this device, is actually sometimes using 100 megabytes a month. Maybe you don't realize that your security camera or this device or this, different things are going on. And you can break it down literally from day to week to month. And again, you can go per device. And in that pie chart, it will even break down things, like I said, versus like website usage versus video on demand to even like gaming. If you want to see literally how much you're using in Steam alone, you can break that information down. But here, I'm just going to turn it quickly. I don't want to have it on too long because I don't want to add more RF transmission interference. But here you can just see a quick little the lighting effect that comes on. But you can go in and you can configure that lighting effect within the software. So if you want to customize the RGB experience, you can. And it actually does have some functional elements. You can actually set up the RGB software to be linked with certain events. So you can actually have it notify you under certain conditions if something occurs. So that RGB lighting doesn't necessarily just look cool, but it can also serve a functional benefit. And I did think somebody had a question. Eugene was asking a little bit about VPN support. Both of these routers do support our VPN client functionality, which I think is actually a really cool option. It's not talked about a lot, and I know VPN has become quite popular over the last couple of years. But one really cool thing with the VPN functionality is, let's say if you go with a third party and you sign up with a VPN service, normally the way that it works is you would have to install that VPN client software to that device. So you'd have to install like a VPN client on your phone, on your desktop, something like that. Now what you can actually do is you can install the VPN software on the router. And once you actually install it on the router, it can actually be distributed across different devices. And we have some very more advanced options there too, that for VPN enthusiasts, you have some really cool flexibility and functionality if you're looking for that essentially benefit that VPN can offer. But keep in mind, you do have to have a VPN service provider to be able to log in that functionality there.
Excellent. Let me get this out of the way here. Oh, I lost the comment. There we go. And I can join you back on screen now.
No worries.
Just trying to keep up with slides and stuff. So I think this would probably be a good spot just to take the briefest of pause. Because like I said, we've just got this lonely little piece of tech, an adorable RT-AX86U Zaku router.
Oh, awesome! So the higher end model. Very cool.
I mean, it just like we were kind of chatting it out with the folks back here at Newegg, and they kind of took a scan of the comments and the people streaming right now, and it through no specific mention of what was in the comment, I just feel really good that the random number generator that we were using pulled up a comment talking about how the red looks sick. So SA Blister, be on the lookout for a follow-up from the Newegg social media team reaching out, because hopefully you really do like red, because we've got something red that can coordinate your home internet traffic, and we feel like that's a good pairing. You'll be able to give it a good home.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic router. It's going to have a wide range of coverage. It's super fast, a lot of rich options that I've only talked about just some of them. And one really last cool point that I didn't touch on here is that both these models also fully support our AI mesh technology. So a lot of sometimes people kind of wonder, is mesh better than a traditional Wi-Fi router? Actually, in most situations, a traditional Wi-Fi router will cover about 85% plus of the coverage requirements that most people have in homes. They will generally also offer faster performance than a mesh-based networking product. Mesh is most advantageous when you usually need an ultra large wide level of coverage.
Yeah.
And you also want to ensure that the stability for that coverage is quite good. If you were in a scenario, maybe you had like the 82 or you had the 86, and you found that what we call in the last mile coverage. So maybe like at the very end, maybe going out into your patio or your backyard or in your garage, or maybe somewhere where you want to be able to improve the coverage, you find that it's a little bit weak. The great thing is that we have a wide range of ASUS routers. You could either duplicate it, you could literally just get another 82U, or you get another 86U, or you can get any number of other compatible ASUS routers, and you can make your own mesh network. It's super simple. Literally, it's within the app. You're going to click a button. It says, do you want to add this other router and make your own mesh network? And bam, you've created now your own Wi-Fi mesh network. So you don't have to go replace anything. You don't have to reconfigure settings. You literally can just get that other router, add it to the network, and now you have essentially that broader level of coverage that you're looking for.
Yeah, I swapped out mesh recently. I was living in a place that was a really funky floor plan, and I had a mesh router, and it was great. And in our new place, the nodes, putting multiple nodes in the house, they're overlapping in a way where, especially for smartphones, they won't let go. So when they connect to a node, they're not smart enough. Our smart devices aren't smart enough to hand that over. But it's one of the things that I've always really liked about ASUS routers is you're not locked into one or the other. It might be
either or.
It might be a little bit more legwork, or you're adding a whole extra router to make a mesh network. But that to me seems like it's going to be easier than like ripping out all of your existing networking gear to install something completely different.
Yeah, and we also do have new repeater products too, so you don't even have to go to the quote-unquote extent of adding a whole other router. But keep in mind that all the nodes that you fundamentally have in a mesh networking product are essentially also routers, but they're just referred to as a node. Node is just a kind of convenient name that's been made to make it easier for sometimes people to understand, as opposed to it being a router. But effectively, you're doing the same exact thing. And the benefit is that because the routers generally have higher amplification radio designs, it just essentially means they have more powerful antennas. You generally would have better performance with two kind of AI mesh enabled routers combined to make a mesh network than you would with just a kind of traditional mesh network. So in kind of either scenario, you're going to get a better experience. So that's the cool thing about it, is it's really up to you. But I think next up, we've got some peripherals, right?
Yeah, we do. I've got the cooler up first, but where did you want to?
Oh, no, that's fine. We can touch on the cooler. I think one note though on the cooler, right, though, is that I think on the cooler side, there is no longer availability on the RX-based cooler. So I think we're probably going to be touching on the Zaku cooler, right?
Gotcha.
Which would go really well with that Zaku motherboard and the GT301 chassis. And I think the inventory for this model might not be coming until next week, and it will be in limited quantity. So just, if you guys want to pick up this cooler, just make sure to go ahead and keep it tuned to the Newegg website there on the product page, right? We can go ahead and bring up that cooler. This is essentially the RX-based version right here. So this is, we do have, like I said, the ROG Strix LC version of this. It is going to be a high-performance 360 millimeter AIO. Of course, it'll get you entirely covered, whether it's 11th gen, 10th gen series CPUs, Ryzen 3000 series, Ryzen 5000 series. Has full ARGB lighting that's on there, a really nice, clean, stylized pump housing on there. One of the cool things here is you don't have to kind of any complex secondary controllers for the ROG Strix coolers or the Gundam coolers. They pretty much will just connect directly to the RGB header on the motherboard. Then you have one pump connection that goes also to the motherboard, and that's it. So that allows you to actually have very simplified level of setup and control. So either you can control the fans inside the UEFI BIOS if you don't want to have any software installed on your system, or you can use, of course, our AI suite if you're installing on an ASUS-based motherboard. While we would hope everybody out there is installing this on ASUS board, do keep in mind these are fully compatible with, of course, other manufacturers' motherboards. So in that regard, if you are going to run this on a non-ASUS ecosystem, you still can upgrade to one of these really awesome coolers. And again, if you don't see this RX version of it available, you can pick this up with the ROG Strix LC 360. which essentially is all white as well. We also have it in a black variant, but it just won't have that Gundam design. But this does pair beautifully if you could pair it up with the Z590 RX-based motherboard, the Gundam-based board.
Yeah, it's real pretty. Sorry, I was just watching our own B-roll.
Oh yeah, no, it's a great looking. And if you go to the product page will show you, I think, a really nice highlight of essentially kind of the front pump housing and the RGB lighting implementation that is available to you. It's a really beautiful design. So here, the cooler itself looks great, but I think really the pump housing is really actually what looks distinct. Here, you don't see it too much in the B-roll, but the pump housing is what's quite different on the design for the Strix LC and for the Gundam, because there we actually even took inspiration from the mechs, where you actually have the horns that are there visible on there with the actual mech face that's on there as well. Looks really, really cool, really, really clean. And on the ROG Strix version of it, so the standard version, it has the ROG emblem and a special actually coating finish that we call MVCM, which is kind of like a composite polymer that has almost like a chrome-like appearance, but it's not full metal. So it gives it a really cool effect when you see it. So you can get it, again, in that RX version, or you can get it in the non-RX version. Yeah, there you can see, looks really cool. That pump housing looks really cool. And if you get the regular version of it, it also, I think, equally looks great. And of course, here you get the tried and true performance and quality that you would have from the Acetec-based pump designs, who have been a longtime partner with us for our AO-based coolers.
Yeah, sorry about that. I had I could have sworn we had just one other close-up on that pump house, so I went to the site instead.
Yeah, no problem. But I think, yeah, definitely you guys there, you can really see that beautiful ID design. And that was an important part of that collaboration, where we really wanted to make sure that we paid homage and respect to the mechs, right, and to the Gundam IP, and be able to make sure that you could really holistically see these individual elements within each one of the designs that we have on the products, right? So that it just didn't feel like you were slapping on a sticker, right? That there really were these kind of subtle design touches that really added a vibe and a feel to it that helped you evolve that overall kind of look and feel.
Yeah, and I love like logos on the fans.
Yep. It's just one of those little things, but it does make a difference. You'd be surprised, like when the fan blade spins. Of course, it will actually add a little bit of color to the inner wheel. And when our fans are not running, so if you've got something like our fan stop technology enabled, which can come through our fan calibration, the actual fans won't generally spin when you're like just watching, like, let's say, a YouTube stream, or you're reading your email, or you're checking out like a forum post or something like that, right? So it allows the design to kind of shine through, whether they're spinning or they're not spinning.
For sure.
But I think next is the Zaku based 240 millimeter AO cooler.
I don't think we've got B-roll on that. Give me 1 second, and I'm gonna
no worries.
I'm gonna pull up the site so we can at least have a better visual for that.
Yeah, and this is essentially going to be very similar to these guys. You're just stepping down to a 240 millimeter version. So a lot of the times we get users that ask, is it worth me kind of going over to the 360 versus 240? Vast majority of users, especially just when gaming, a 240 millimeter is more than enough. 360 is really best suited to users that are going to really be actively overclocking, or they want to take a little bit more advantage of the additional thermal dissipation performance, and essentially help to keep their system quieter, because they essentially can displace a little bit more heat. They can maybe run those fans a little bit lower and have just a little bit of a quieter operation. But the 240 millimeter really is going to be kind of the de facto standard for mid-range builds and high-end builds alike. And we do also have a Zaku 2 variant cooler that is available here. And this really pairs perfectly with that B550M board, and then also the GT301 chassis. And here you can see that I love the design on this one. It's got a really bold, unique, specific stylized aesthetic, and I love kind of that centered eye effect there, right, with the horn. I think it just really pulls it off and has an amazing aesthetic. And of course, these are RGB fans that are also on this unit. So while it's red there, you don't have to run it in red, but of course, red, you would really want to be doing that to kind of keep the design cohesive between all those other Zaku components.
Yeah, that's real sharp too. Again, I'm gonna have to ask the ninjas like what's up with some of our B-roll, because I really like those pump housings.
Yeah, and that's really kind of the distinctive design element. If you take a look at the tough gaming version that we have, which is kind of this unit, which is utilizing the non-quote-unquote Zaku-based edition, it will instead have the Tough Gaming logo there that would kind of complement the Tough Gaming series of motherboards. And it's just kind of a general neutral black stylized aesthetic, so it works well in any build again. So really, it will work great regardless of kind of what the I think aesthetic that you have within your system is. But this one will really pair perfectly with the Zaku base B550M motherboard and of course the GT301 chassis.
You guys think, like, because whiteout builds are really popular right now. Do you think we're gonna get like code red builds? Is that going to be the next jam?
Red's always kind of been, I think, a popular kind of alternate build aesthetic. I think, historically, blue is probably there after kind of black and white. Blue trends to be very, very strong. You see a pretty good amount of kind of, I think, green. Pink and blue and purple tones have really become popular over the last couple of years as well. I think even a little bit more than red, but red is kind of one of that. It's very classic for ASUS and especially for ROG because red is kind of the default color of the ROG brand. So, for a very long time, we continue to always see there's these classic red and black builds that are always present year after year across any chipset, across different form factors. I don't think we're ever going to see a year where there isn't going to be red and black builds. So it is a great, color alternative.
Yeah, for sure. I my first build was black and red. Now I'm doing green and blue. So I'll have to play around with maybe my next build going back to code red.
Great options. But that's the cool thing about PC DIY, especially with the base hardware being monochrome, and RGB. That's a cool thing. You can change it up. You could go 6 months. You could run blue and white, and then later on you could go to cyan and purple, and then after that you could go to all red, or you could go to green, or whatever you want.
We talked about that like back in the day. Trying to switch up colors on your PC case meant like buying all new fans.
Yeah. Now thankfully you don't have to go that route.
All right. What do we want to move to next? I've got
I think next
power supplies and keyboards and mice.
Touch on the kind of the peripheral lineup I think that we've got there. So whatever we got there on the peripheral side. So again, I think if you guys will check the Newegg website, you will see that this keyboard should hopefully be available. I don't know if it's sold out from the last time yesterday when I checked it. We do have some more rough inventory coming in for some of the peripherals. This will include the keyboard, the mouse pad. So just kind of keep that in mind, guys, that some of the peripheral items you won't see until kind of possibly next week in terms of that. So just kind of keep available. And they probably are also going to be in one of the most limited available runs that we have at this point because a large amount of the inventory has already been sold through. So just make sure to keep it tuned there for the restock that should be coming in shortly there. So what we have here is going to be the ROG Strict Scope TKL. You can see it's a beautiful keyboard with that RX design aesthetic, custom keycaps. This is a Cherry MX based keyboard. So you can go ahead and customize the keycaps, but I don't see why you would on this because, of course, it's got those beautiful customized Gundam keycaps which go across perfectly. It is, of course, RGB per key LED. Customized keyboard. It does have a detachable cable, which is really cool. You don't see the cable attached there, so you can detach it. So if you want to be a little bit more mobile with it, move it around, keep a really clean, stylized desktop, you can go that route. The top keys, I really like the way that we've designed it, where they're default to be action-based as opposed to function. So you don't hit that kind of F5, F10. You'll see that we have toggles for, let's say, like the volume, for mute, for play. All those are essentially the pre-designated default. So the moment that you're essentially, let's say, listening to, Spotify desktop, right, or, you're watching a video online, you can just press the pause button and it will pause as opposed to you having to do like a function or something else. Alternatively, of course, you can remap, rebind keys through the Armoury Crate software. There's a stealth mode button that you see on there, which is really cool, which will auto minimize all your active windows and mute your system. There's built-in memory, so you can store profiles on the keyboard as well, and you can do hardware level macro control. So if you want to be able to customize that, you also do have the ability to customize the RGB lighting through the keyboards. You can use the function and the arrow keys to actually do hardware level RGB lighting. So you don't have to use the software, depending on kind of your preference. That is a nice option there. You'll also see it's got this cool light bar that's on the front, outside of the, of course, RGB lighting that the keyboards have as well. As I noted, you've got that detachable keyboard, which comes included. There are going to be, of course, adjustable feet, and it has 4 points in terms of a anti-skid, essentially non-slip base that makes it really nice. And overall, a really, really great option if you're looking for something. And you'll kind of see a little bit of kind of the reason why TKL makes sense. If you're somebody that has been favoring predominantly that full-size keyboard, the big benefit that you go with when you have a TKL is going to be that there's no 10 key right here, right? And the advantage is that you can keep that mouse kind of tighter and closer, put less strain on this part of your arm and your kind of your shoulder, which generally will help to feel more comfortable. And so you can kind of keep things a little bit tighter. You can move a little bit more efficiently and kind of have a nicer, cleaner setup. Of course, though, if you guys do want keyboards that do have the 10 key, we do have options like the flare and the standard scope, non-TKL. And we do even have our new Claymore 2, which is really cool, where the actual numpad can actually be detached or attached, depending on your preference. So kind of whichever way you want. And even if you want something smaller, we've got the 65% Falchion, which is really cool if you want to go wireless and you want to even go more compact than this. But this is a really, really nice keyboard.
Yeah, looking real sharp. Although I also had to just, because it was in our rundown in our sheet, the electropunk.
Yeah,
really
so I
cool.
actually thanks for bringing that up. I included their links that if you guys see that, like I said, you really like the keyboard, but we don't have the Gundam version available. We do have two other kind of variants. We have the standard variant, which I'm showing here on the stream, which is the standard kind of black version. And then, of course, we also have that electropunk version, which I think looks really, really cool too. So
yeah,
those are all the same keyboard, essentially, just they're going to have a difference there. And again, these are Cherry MX based. I think you can, it's in red is the standard switch that we offer in that. If there's an alternate switch, you'll see it there on the product page, and you can kind of click through and select which switch you're looking for.
And complementing this is a really sharp looking mouse too.
Yeah, so we've got the ROG Strix Impact 2. This is kind of going to be a compact mouse. I think a little bit more geared towards those with smaller hands, or those that kind of prefer maybe a little bit more a claw mechanic. If you're definitely on the larger hand size like me, this might not be ideal for you, so kind of keep that in mind. But we do have a wide range of mice that can cover you really well in terms of the overall fit there. High performance optical sensor, so really, really good tracking performance. But you can see here, this super complements the overall kind of aesthetic that you have with the look and feel of the RX series hardware. And it's just going to be a great option here. Now, this is a semi kind of ambidextrous based mouse, so it works well whether you're left or right-handed. So it's nice in terms of that regard. You have on-the-fly DPI adjustment. There is onboard memory. One of the really cool things, though, that this mouse is going to kind of have up its sleeve is going to be, if I show you guys right here, switch over to a little bit of an alternate shot. But these are switches inside of a mice. And you can actually swap out your switches to have different actuation experience. Some are going to be faster, some are going to be a little bit slower, some are going to be much more durable, and some are also going to have a different audible kind of characteristics. So if you kind of want a sharp, really consistent, fast actuation, then you can swap something out to that. Now, the switches that we already use are very good quality switches, but traditionally, for most mice, what you're going to have is that if you want to customize the switches or the switches failed, you literally have to take apart the mouse and you would have to desolder the switch and potentially damaging the actual PCB. But here, you don't have to worry about that. Literally, just there's a couple of screws. You remove the screws, and you can then go ahead and pick any number of different types of micro switches, can drop the switch in there and customize the experience to your liking. So it's a really, really cool feature that you have there. And this one also does have RGB lighting. It's there on the center wheel, kind of like what you have right here. Then there's rear lighting that's on the back, and then there's like this little front lighting that's on the front of the mouse as well. So overall, really, really cool mouse. I think going to be very popular. One other last thing that sometimes some people don't realize is going to be, we also use what's called a pivoted mechanism. It's kind of another little ROG innovation where there's this actual mechanism itself. We actually have an extended material composition for this portion that makes contact with the micro switch. So this right here, you can see is a switch, and there's actually what's called a plunger. And let me see if I can maybe get it for you guys here, so you can see here. But if you see right there, that's the actual switch. And there, if you were to click that, that's your plunger. So that's actually what's actuating your switch, right? So we actually have a special mechanism where there's essentially a zero gap design. If you bring up the product page, I think that might be linked there. You might see a little kind of visual reference that shows it like a little diagram. But this essentially allows for much more consistent and accurate depression. So even something that you might not kind of realize that makes a difference, is actually there in tying the internal design. It's not just the sensor, it's just not the fit and finish material that we're utilizing, all those kind of things. We've tried to look at a lot of different elements. So it really is a great mouse. But if you guys are looking for, like I said, different options, we've got everything from the new Gladius 3, wired and wireless, ultralights like the Keras, extremely customizable mice like the Chakram, and even large, big mice with lots of buttons like our new Spatha X. So kind of whether you want to go super small, lightweight, in the middle, super customizable, whatever, we've got you covered one way or another.
You've got options for everybody. No one will be left out. And
that push fit design that I talked about there, also keep in mind that it's an exclusive RG innovation. So you will not find that on other manufacturers' mice. So it's a really cool option that we have there. So the last thing that I guess
we can definitely check out the power supply, and then we've got the case and the monitor that we've been getting lots of questions on the ASUS monitors.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, I do want to make sure that we touch on the headset there, but I think if we can just show them there the sheath mouse pad that goes along with that.
Yeah, give me a second to pull that up. I don't think I had any elements on that.
No worries. Yeah. And so for you guys, we have the ROG sheath mouse pad. So we have this in the RX version. Again, this will be available limited quantity. Looks really great, I think, with any mouse, but of course pairs perfectly with that Strix Impact 2 version. And we do also have the standard size sheath, which is actually what you see right here that I'm using. This is the black edition, but we do have it in a pink edition. We have it in an electro punk edition. This is a large, high quality anti-slip base. Very good quality stitching around the edges so that it doesn't curl and doesn't fray. Really good smooth traction as well on this unit. So if you're looking for something, like I said, on that smaller size, the RX sheath edition that we have there is going to be a perfect complement if you can pick up the mouse, or if you just want to be able to pick up something on the Gundam side. If you want to go bigger, we've got also the big size sheath for you. And price is very reasonable on this one. I think this is only $30, so it's a very nice option there.
That's great. Again, I've also just loved this trend in oversized, basically just covering your entire desktop. That's all I want. Is like I want to
for sure. So I think before we get into the PSU, we can just quickly touch here on the Delta. So the Delta is also another item that we'll be getting in next week, I think, on the refresh. And the Throne, which is the matching unit here. So the cool thing about this Delta headset is this is actually a USB-C headset, which is still pretty rare. It's a fully digital headset, so you can go ahead and connect this to your phone, your Nintendo Switch, to your PC. It doesn't matter. There is an included adapter so that if you don't have a USB-C port, you can adapt it to a standard Type A port. So you are good to go. The reason why, though, this is fully digital is because this headset does integrate an ESS Saber DAC, actually 4 of them. It's a quad ESS Saber DAC and amp implementation inside the headphone. So sometimes for users to get like a better, richer, more detailed experience, they will get like an outboard DAC and amp. But here this is all self-contained, and the great thing about that is that experience then becomes very consistent. So kind of the sonic experience, the sound stage, the detailing, the warmth, will be very similar between the way they use it on your Switch, your phone, your desktop, because the DAC and the amp are all fully unified in here. So very good quality construction, fully adjustable, of course. Head cup, you can go ahead and rotate these, so you can see that you can kind of, if you want that classic kind of resting on your neck vibe, you can do that. There's a detachable mic that's on here, so this is great still that you can use this kind of like as a normal headphone, right? And you don't have to kind of have to be limited in that respect. But then when you want the headset functionality, you can attach the high quality mic right here. It is actually a good mic for a headset. If you want to turn off the lighting, there's literally a switch to toggle it off. So if you want to go a little bit more passive, if you're out and about, you can turn it off and on. You can also adjust the volume via an on-cup volume adjustment. And also, if you bring up, I think, the product page, you'll see it. But these ear pads right here are removable, and we give you 2 versions of them. So there are 2 kind of ones. One is a little bit more isolated. It will give you a little bit kind of warmer, richer tone. And one will be a little bit more of a breathable material. So one is a protein micro leather, and the other one's a little bit more of a mesh composite material. But the great thing is that you can swap those. They both come inside there, so you can find the one that fits better for your kind of head, the clamping force, the isolation, and also the breathability. And You also can fully customize the entire audio experience within the ROG Armory Crate software. So if you want to do things like virtual surround, you want to adjust the bass, the mid-range, you have a multi-band EQ, you have different profiles, a lot of really cool options. Again, if this one sells out, we do make the Delta in this version right here, which is kind of the silver standard model. And then we also have it in a white edition as well. So that RX one, I think, is my favorite looking one. It looks the coolest.
It's sharp.
But if it sells out, we do have the standard Delta, which is the same exact headphone. It's just silver, and then also the same exact headphone, and we have it in white.
Yeah, I can't tell you how much I've loved this trend on that Saber DAC.
It definitely adds a nice detailing and tonality. It definitely ups the game there. If you appreciate, like I said, music, movies, games, videos, it's a nice way to just elevate the caliber of the headphone. And kind of one thing that people don't always realize is that sometimes you can get a very good DAC and amp, but sometimes you want to pair the design of your headphone to your DAC and your amp. And just because you get kind of good options doesn't mean that when they all come together, they make a good experience. The good thing sometimes about doing what's called an integrated solution is that we can pair the driver design to the DAC and to the amp, so that we can kind of like holistically manage the experience to be a little bit more uniform and consistent. You actually see this trend happening in hi-fi systems with more specialized speakers now being what's called fully integrated, where they integrate the crossover, the DAC, and the amp all inside of the actual cabinet. So the speaker is literally self-contained. It's literally all done inside of one system, because they can kind of more tune and ensure the experience is consistent in that way.
Yeah, and it definitely cuts down on any kind of setup. And then compatibility. It's always been funny to me how audio tech is always a step behind. Because we'll hold on to... I recently just reviewed a microphone that still had mini USB. And this was like a new product that was being sold today. And you're like, oh no.
Yeah, that is one nice thing that you'll find on a lot of our peripherals. Pretty much all of our modern peripherals are all USB-C. All of our mice, all of our keyboards, our headphones, everything is transitioned to USB. And we were actually one of the very first manufacturers to offer USB-C kind of almost across the range on that. So if you've kind of been wanting to keep your peripherals up to date there, you've got that. Now, one other cool item there is going to complement the headphone there is going to be this guy. So this is the Throne, as we call it. It is a headphone holder. So of course you can put your headphones on there. I don't have the power adapter connected, but this does have RGB lighting that's built into this, and it can fully be synchronized and controlled. But it's got a couple of cool things built into it. One, there is a Qi wireless pad that's built into this. So if you put your phone on there, you can of course have charging support. It does also have high-speed USB 3 connectivity. So there's going to be a connection that would go to your PC, and then you would get two high-speed USB 3 ports that would be right at access, in your setup. It does also include actually a pretty cool level of functionality in terms that there's a analog headphone connection on here. And why? Well, let's say maybe you don't have the Deltas. Maybe you've got a really nice pair of analog headphones. Well, the cool thing is this higher-end version comes also with the ESS DAC built into this Throne. So when you plug this in, you essentially have a USB DAC and amp that you're also connecting to your system. So it's a headphone holder, a USB hub, and a DAC, and a kind of RGB accessory all in one. So you could plug your headphone into that, and then you would get essentially those benefits from that ESS Saber DAC that you can go ahead and customize your audio experience with. So it's a very cool accessory. And if you don't necessarily need the Qi wireless charging, there's also a non-Qi wireless charging edition of it. But that's the Throne.
I can't stress that enough, that I'm doing reviews on some audio gear right now, and it's not prohibitively expensive, but it's not cheap getting that Saber DAC in like a standalone dongle for a phone or something like that. So it definitely gets me that audio nerd glee to see it show up in something like your headphone stand, just to take some room off your desk.
For sure. And actually somebody was interesting. They were asking about how it compares to the A40s. I will say that they compete very, very favorably to those popular headsets, the A40s and the A50s. I find that, one, these are, like I said, native USB-C, which those model headphones you're noting at are not. So I'd love that flexibility that I can go from literally like my Switch to my phone to my desktop, all with the same headphone, right? And the actual software suite, I think, is quite robust and flexible. But I find that really music, movies, games, videos online, it's got good timbre, good soundstage tonality and detailing. Bass is present with good extension, but it's not muddy. Mid-range is well presented, and treble is not sharp, but it's defined and clear. So I really think it is a great all-around headphone. Are there definitely going to be better options if you want to get really expensive and go with, you know, like a planar magnetic and a discrete, you know, amp and all kinds of stuff? For sure, unequivocally. But this is, you know, we tried to hit the balance of offering a premium headset that also can offer you a great headphone experience. And I think that's where the Delta shines, is that you can really have a good quality headphone. But like I said, you can turn that RGB off. And I think the styling is quite nice. You know, if I just pop this on for you guys, I'm gonna put it on. You guys can kind of take a look at my head here. But you know, I think that it's got a clean design aesthetic to it, and it doesn't look super crazy and heavy, right? It looks kind of just like a standard, I think, nice quality, larger headphone. And then at the same time, though, you know, I've got a really cool gaming headphone, right? And then when I want to essentially use this and take advantage of, you know, Discord, Steam Chat, you know, Ventrilo, whatever it is that I'm using, right? Bam, I can plug in my mic. It's flexible, and I have my microphone, right? So I think that it makes for a great headset.
Yeah, I was using a gaming headset for a trade show one year. I just couldn't get my hands on a good lav, and everyone was making fun of me for looking like a lost pilot just out on the show floor. So yeah, it's nice having a detachable microphone when you want to keep it a bit more discreet.
For sure, for sure. So I think, like you said, we've got PSU here. We can quickly show this one, but I think this is a sold-out base product, and it's not going to be refreshed. Yeah. So if it happens to show up, maybe there might be some available inventory. But I know that the RX version is sold out. But for those of you that are interested, of course, we do have our standard version of these PSUs. We have a white edition and a black edition, so we got you covered there. If you're kind of wondering a little bit about what does ROG and kind of ASUS do to make their PSU specials, and specifically for this series, we do have, they're fully modular, high quality in terms of their certification ratings in terms of 80+. We use our ultra large axial tech based fans, which are static pressure optimized to give you good airflow. But specifically their internal topology is advanced. So it's really, really good power delivery, but we also use very large heat sinks. The actual internal heat sinks are going to be much larger than traditional heat sinks that are used in power supplies. So this allows the power supply to run cooler and with better efficiency. We also do include a coupon code with Cable Mod, so you actually get a discount. So if you want to get custom cables, that is cool that you get that included in there. And there's also some customization elements to the side decals. So this is the white edition right here. There is a specific Gundam variant that we do have, but again, I think that one model might be sold out, and that one comes with custom cables and colors and decals that would really complement the RX-based build. But this is the white edition model, been super popular, goes really well with something you know, like Fantex has chassis that have an open PSU shroud, or ROG 601, ROG Helios chassis, which this would perfectly complement as well.
Yeah, we could still pop in this white PSU with a Gundam build, kind of building on.
Oh, it would look perfect. Yeah, and same thing. You could go with one of our black power supplies, the ROG Strix in black, if you wanted to go with the Zaku based build. But Zaku, as it's based off of the Tough Gaming lineup, Newegg does also carry our Tough Gaming power supplies, which recently launched a couple months ago. And we do have a wide range of Tough Gaming power supply options, including kind of like your standard targets of like, you know, 550, 650 watt as well. And those are still, you know, very solid options in terms of their kind of their quality, reliability, and performance. So kind of, again, depending on your price and your budget and your aesthetic, you've got our Tough Gaming line, our ROG Strix line, and then our highest end line with the ROG Thor, which is even going to have a custom like OLED display on there for wattage. Excuse me, not an OLED display, but it has a wattage display on there that actually will show you a real-time tracking of the actual wattage on your power supply.
Nice.
What's the next item there? I think monitor. I think we're getting pretty close.
Well, I've got some B-roll. We could show the tower and see what some of this stuff
like.
looks like.
Yeah. Is this the GT301? Because I think the Helios is, I think, out of stock, guys. So I don't know. You can double check on the Newegg product page. This one will not be, I think, available. But we do have, of course, the silver and white edition of this available in the non-Gundam edition. And then we also have this in a black edition. It's a beautiful, large chassis. That whole front bezel that you're seeing right there with the RX mech, of course, fully lights up in RGB. And that will also load up with an ROG pattern on it. If you bring up a product page, you'll probably be able to see a design inference on it here, because here it's not lit up. But this is really designed kind of for your high-end builds. You can, of course, do like 360 millimeter water cooling or AIO in the front or in the top. The actual top and the front have removable radiator trays, or fan mount trays, either one, right, depending on what you're going to do. You can do vertical mounting for the graphics card, or you can do traditional horizontal mounting. You see there in the bottom PSU cavity that it's got an open, essentially designed so that your PSU actually can be visible, but still cover up the rest of kind of the internal components. Really great choice for water cooling, and tons of connectivity. This has 4 front USB Type A connections and a USB Type C. So actually, you will really need a high-end motherboard to actually cover all those 5 connections on this chassis. So do keep that in mind. But it is a very impressive chassis. It has an integrated fan controller and an integrated ARGB controller in there as well. Really, really awesome. And a lot of our users that build in this really love the aesthetic. It's quite different in terms of kind of the traditional design.
Now, I've got to show off the Zaku, though, because this is crazy looking. I love this.
And this is based off of our GT301, which is kind of our compact ATX chassis. So while the Zaku-based motherboard that we showed is going to be a micro ATX, this one you can go entirely with an ATX-based motherboard if you wanted to fit inside here. It's going to work really well. We actually have a specialized design for the tempered glass panel that it's actually rested so that it won't fall. It is also got your straps there, which add kind of a little bit of a different stylized aesthetic. You have the 3 fans. Those RGB fans come included, so that's no cost. You kind of have to add RGB fans. This chassis is best suited for those that are going to generally want to do a 240 millimeter and front mounted, not top mounted. So you would have fans on the top of the chassis, but not an AIO, because the clearance between the top of the chassis and the motherboard is going to be tight. Traditional mounting setup here would be that you would have your AIO in the front, or you can have something like a tower heatsink. A cool little accessory that you see right there too is that it does integrate the headphone holder, which is nice, so that if you want to put something like, your Tough Gaming H1, H3, or an ROG headset right there, you can hang it right there off the side. It's overall got a cool stylized aesthetic. But even at standard pricing, this is not an expensive chassis. I think normal MSRP for this is about $100 or $110. So it's not an expensive chassis. It looks great in the standard black aesthetic, but this red one really just pops, and you can see how great it looks like with the Zaku 2 based motherboard, right, when you pair them together. And if you could imagine, if you paired this then with the Zaku 2 cooler, oh man, it's gonna
again, I was making jokes about like a Code Red build, but no, this would actually take us over the top. I love it.
Yeah, and this will perfectly complement, of course, the monitor as well, where they all kind of have that same exact color theme and consistency. I think it looks fantastic. I really love this aesthetic within it, but I know a lot of people like the RX, so kind of choose your camp, right? Are you Team RX or are you Team Zaku? I'd love to see what people are in the chat. I know that the design differences are a little bit different, because one is Intel, one's AMD, and one's micro ATX, and one's ATX, but still a really cool design aesthetic there.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess that takes us to the monitor. We've got some B-roll here.
Yep.
If we want to play with this, the 279.
Yeah, and so on the monitor side, our big thing is, of course, always really trying to be able to offer gamers a wide range, and we've got an extensive lineup of monitors. I believe this RX monitor might already be sold out. In terms of the specific the RX.
I didn't catch that this morning, if it is or not.
But we do again have this same exact version available, the XG279 available in essentially a non RX based version. So it won't be white; it will be in black, but you still get 1440p IPS based display. Supports high refresh rate up to 170 hertz, G-Sync compatibility, as well as our eLMB sync technology. eLMB sync is a really cool feature that some of you might not be aware of. It's called backlight strobing. So what it means is essentially is that we can help to synchronize the backlight and essentially help to improve motion blur. And this can actually be quite substantial. Some people actually will find that using eLMB will be in excess of using a much higher refresh rate panel. So even though this is quite high refresh at 170 hertz, it can actually offer better motion clarity than even like a 240 hertz monitor. So it's nice that you have those options available to you. And a cool innovation that ASUS offers is that we were the first to implement ELMB sync, so backlight strobing, along with adaptive sync. So if you don't know what adaptive sync means, is that essentially it refreshes and aligns your graphics card's FPS rate, right, with the refresh rate of your monitor, right, so that you can essentially not have any tearing and help to have a smoother, more responsive gaming experience. Normally, when you would enable backlight strobing, it could not be done with adaptive sync at the same time, but this monitor does support ELMB sync, which means you can do them at the same time. So a very, very cool monitor. And again, with that IPS, you really get a great balance of getting that good color performance, wide viewing angles, and that 2560 by 1440, I think, is the real sweet spot. Add in that G-Sync compatibility, and you've got a really, really great monitor.
For sure, and also in the Zaku flavor too.
The Zaku flavor
it's
is going to be a little bit different in terms of that monitor's based kind of specifications. That one is based on the VG27A series monitor, but you're still going to get a really solid monitor in terms, of course, the kind of core specifications for gaming, right? So when you're talking about this model, you're still going to get the display HDR 400, 27 inches, 1440p, IPS-based display. This one's going to look a little bit more like a traditional monitors, with the exception of the back has that Zaku-based red design. And there's also some decals. Interesting, if you're like a Gunpla fan and you do your own modeling, part of the reason why we did the decals and the sticker is that you actually sometimes will use those when you're making your own models to kind of cover cuts or certain kind of weld marks that you kind of have when you're building your models. So we felt even kind of having this synergy between being their similar ethos and how you layered the design on the monitor versus what you did within something like a modeling kit was present. This one also, same thing, up to 170 hertz, and many of those same kind of T technologies. And again, here you can get the standard tough gaming version of this monitor as opposed to the Zaku version. Although I believe for this one, we should have this monitor available.
Yeah. Again, just a real sharp look. Again, I maybe started out looking at like whiteout, but the Zaku components, putting all that together, might have me swayed if I were going to try and pick one theme over the other.
So Derek Kelly actually makes an interesting comment here where he says, I'm not a fan of motion blur, but it sounds a nice option to have. And so to clarify, Derek, the option I'm talking about doesn't actually add motion blur.
It's the opposite.
It's removing the motion blur. So I want to make sure that's really clear. The ELMB technology is a motion blur reduction technology, specifically because of what's called persistence. When you have essentially your pixels that are going from one kind of color to another color, they can create a trailing effect. And that trailing effect is actually what you see as actually the blur. And it's actually more pronounced with certain types of colors, more so than other colors. But essentially having the backline strobing helps to control and sync that especially process so that you can significantly reduce motion blur. And this is done because in like especially competitive online games, CSGO, Overwatch, MOBA type games, many types of titles where there's a lot of fast movement and you want to be able to keep clarity and focus on things like legends, ID layouts, certain parts of the HUD, certain parts of, your character's kind of on-screen, armament or whatever it might be, that there might be telltale signs. That's specifically where ELMB is. It's not something I would say you want to have on 100% of the time, because in some game environments, maybe you don't want to have it enabled, but in other options you do. But our goal there is to essentially offer you the flexibility that if you want to see that it can improve the experience for you, you can toggle it on. So that's what ELMB is all about. One feature that I'll lastly touch on there on the monitor that's really cool though for the VG series, that Zaku monitor, is that monitor also comes with our display widget light software, which is pretty cool. This is actually software you can install in Windows to control the OSD display interface. I'm not sure, JC, if you have the product page up for that monitor.
I'll pull it back up.
You would want to bring it up for the non-Zaku, because I don't think it's on the Zaku page. It would be for the tough gaming for the tough gaming version. But that software would exist for both models. But the cool thing is when you install that software, you can control the OSD in Windows. You don't have to physically touch the buttons. You can install the software and you can change different presets. So like I sometimes like to have my presets customized, like one's for my web browser, one might be for a game, one might be for like email, right? And I can change different things, like maybe I want blue light filtering enabled, maybe I want sRGB color balance, maybe for a game, I want specifically certain overdrive settings, or I want other values enabled. But the cool thing is with the display widget light software, it just allows you to essentially control all those options and more readily take advantage of them. Because I think a lot of people don't use a lot of the maybe advanced functions in the monitor, because you're like, you don't want to always go clicking into the monitor, changing different options and kind of going through that process. Where if you could just do it from within Windows, it makes the process simpler and easier for you, right? So yeah, I think if you scroll down towards the bottom, we should probably be seeing it somewhere around there. There you go. Yeah, display widget light. So this is actually a UI piece of software just installed on your system, and you can almost get just about almost all the key parts of the UI, the on-screen display, but available to you in Windows.
And we do have a question here from Decimate the Week 100. From a previous stream, we talked a little bit more about the PG32 UQ and some of the advancements coming to the
that is going
4K.
to be one of the kind of dream monitors. You know, we of course launched the PG32 UQX. So if you're interested in kind of like the step down, but still a super high performance monitor, that's going to be, I think, you know, really a really great option for those of you that are looking for a high performance monitor. You'll be seeing that monitor probably launch towards the end of this month. So my recommendation, just like we talked about in that stream, is that if you're interested in it, make sure to join us in our PCDIY Facebook group, monitor our social media channels. We will definitely be letting you know once it's available in terms of retail availability and e-tail availability. But hopefully we should be getting inventory in towards the end of this month.
Yeah. Again, we got a lot of feedback on the 32U. So
yeah, and I think overall we've kind of ran through a lot there, right? We, you know,
we're through
we
it.
have literally run the entire gamut of everything from motherboards to routers to, you know, headsets to keyboards, right, to monitors, right. But this was, I think, just a great showcase to be able to show you this amazing collaboration between ASUS and Sunrise, and being able to take the amazing Gundam IP and be able to realize it in some amazing products that I think are awesome. And we're super excited to see the community be so excited about it. And like I said, you can definitely still get some of these items available. I think most of the Zaku lineup is still generally available. I think the cooler might not be still available, but most of the other items are still there. Also, make sure when you go to the Newegg website, there are some t-shirts. We have RX version of t-shirts. We have Zaku t-shirts. There's also, I think, an RX tumbler that might still be available. And I think next week too, you'll see some refreshing on the peripheral side. So things like the keyboard, the mice, the mouse pad, and I think the headset, and maybe one other item should be showing up in limited quantity next week. So if you guys are interested, just make sure to keep it tuned to Newegg so you guys have that best opportunity to try to pick it up.
Yeah, because it's always exciting. I love it when ASUS really does go in on one of these partnerships, because it's not just like we put a sticker on a case.
Yeah, no, that
like
was
top to bottom.
That was definitely not the goal here. The goal was to really have, I think, a cohesive design aesthetic. And I think while I just recapped that, Overlord Thread was asking, when does the Zaku 2 cooler come out? It actually already did come out and it sold out. But I think based on our last inventory report, we've got one more small refresh of that Zaku cooler coming in next week.
Yeah, so
like I said, just make sure to keep it tuned. Though per my understanding, though, there won't be a refresh of the RX-based cooler. So if you did kind of really like that white styled cooler, you're going to want to check out the ROG Strix LC White Edition, which will look very similar, but it won't have that really cool, of course, RX mech design on the pump housing. But for the Zaku one, like I said, make sure to check out the site next week.
Definitely. All right. I think that's the perfect place to put a pin in it. JJ, this is always a blast, man. And again, for something that there's just so much love for this property. Like I said, I had to look it up. It's like, this is a show that's been in constant production since 1978. So
yeah, and you can rewatch it, right? You know, if you guys are, you know, yeah,
so much media to catch up on.
Yeah, in the US, right? If you've got Netflix, you can check out. You know, Netflix is showcasing a huge amount of the Gundam series content out there. So if you're not familiar with it, you want to check out some awesome anime, you want to get into a little bit of mechs and some amazing animation, check it out. It's been awesome to be able to work with them, and we're super excited. And again, we'd love to hear your guys' feedback on whether you really love this collaboration and you want to see more from us and ASUS in the future in this regard, because we were really excited about working with them to be able to bring these products out.
Yeah, and just plug it one more time for people to take this conversation off. I mean, obviously, we love chatting with folks on our social media and everything too, but the DIY community that you've been building up has been so much
Yeah.
fun to work in.
So we have our ACPC DIY initiative. We actually have a great campaign and contest going on right now. So if you guys are interested in winning some cool hardware, all you got to do is head over to our ASUS social media channels. Make sure to check out the North American channels that we have. So respectively, that's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, whatever it might be. But if you also want to find a great space where you can ask questions about your build, your components, what to upgrade to, what not to do, what to do, and also find out the most consistent real-time updates on anything that's coming out from ASUS under our entire component lineup, so make sure to check out the ASUS PC DIY Facebook group. I'm the admin of that group. We give updates pretty much on a consistent basis. We have weekly streams and a whole lot more, so we'd love to see you guys there.
Yeah, and just again, our thanks. It's always a blast putting these together, and we love having you on, JJ.
Fantastic, man. Thank you so much for having me, and thanks to everybody that joined in the stream. And good luck to Blaster, was it? Side Blaster that picked up the 86U on setting everything up. Should be an easy experience. You just download the app and should be up to go in like a couple of minutes.
And if he has any issues, I'm sure there's a community of people online in a Facebook group that maybe he could tap into just for a little hands-on expertise. And same folks, thank you as always for tuning in, for showing up. This was a really fun chat to kind of dig through again too, for some of the inside jokes on Gundam lore. And so I really appreciate all of you taking this time to hang out with us and get a little geeky. It's always, these are always soul replenishing for me when we get to have a little fun breaking this stuff down. As always, folks, thanks so much for watching, for tuning in, for streaming, for sharing and subscribing to the channel. For Newegg Studios, I'm Juan Carlos Bagnell with JJ from ASUS, and we'll catch you all on the next stream. Take care.